MyFantasySportsTalk.com.
Welcome back. It's soccer time. I know all you folks have been waiting for some soccer time from My Fantasy Podcast, MyFantasySportsTalk.com, and we're here to let you in on all what's going on. It's World Cup time, World Cup 18 coming from Russia, and we're going to break it all down. Myself, Brandon Reed, co-host Dan Schalk is here. What's up, Dan? Another one.
Soccer is also known as football.
Football. Footy ball. Yeah. So how pumped are you for the World Cup, Dan Schalk?
I will not watch a single second because the U.S. is not in it.
You're one of those guys.
I would have thought a couple of U.S. games, but now that they're not in it, I really have no interest. I don't understand the game, I just the way the clubs and the leagues, there's all different ones, but yet same teams, different players and teams. It's too much for me, but that's luckily why Dillon Davis-Tirado is part of our My Fantasy Sports Talk team, because he can take it.
I mean, the concept of the game is not that hard, Dan. You get the ball in the net.
I understand that, but it's the rest.
Brandon, there's a lot more about putting the ball in the net. Trust me, that is only
this true, but it's like not hard to follow the game though. If you're just an average spectator, it's not hard to follow the game. I'm one of those guys that love a 0-0 game going into the 89th minute. That's what I live for. But anyway, brought the expert in. That's that guy right there, Dillon Davis-Tirado. We call him DDT because big news we probably told you about is that we're launching a new podcast, or this guy right here is DDT, that we're going to be featuring. And it's going to be a soccer dedicated podcast from DDT. So tell the folks at home what's going on, what's new, and what it's going to be about.
Thank you. So what's up, everybody? Because I haven't been on the podcast in so long. I really am excited to announce the Hat Trick podcast is coming to My Fantasy Sports Talk later this month. We've started a mailbag so you guys can get involved with the show. Because number one, the Hat Trick podcast is for you guys, the fans, just like My Fantasy Sports Talk. It's for you, the fans. We are all fans of sports, and we want to talk about it all the time. And I want to talk about soccer all the time. And unfortunately, the Premier League doesn't last long enough. Neither does the Champions League. So I figured to keep you guys engaged, because you were so into the top 5 series and the predictions, and I will have so many predictions coming out soon. Of course, with the World Cup coming up, I'll be covering that as well. I'm going to be glued to the TV. I'm going to try and watch as many games as possible, especially the crucial ones going into the knockout stage. But the podcast is so that way over the summer, you and I can respond to each other's comments about the game of football, talk about transfers that are going on. There's been some big ones that have gone down. There's some potential ones that are going to be happening during the World Cup, so we'll stay tuned for that. And, of course, we're going to talk about, football not just in England, but in France, in Germany, in Spain, the United States. We're going to talk about football everywhere. And I want this podcast to be for you guys to come in, ask your questions, submit your questions to hattrickpod@gmail.com. I always post every day about the podcast, so certainly go on my Twitter. You can find my Twitter handle through the top 5 articles. I'll certainly be sure to make sure I put it out there every day, how you can get involved with the podcast. It is probably the biggest thing I have done for the website since I've joined, and I'm not saying nervous, but I'm very excited to get it started. We're going to be going live on video probably around the end of June is when I target starting the podcast series. And it's really convenient because that'll be when the most of the transfers will be going live and the World Cup will almost be over by that time. So it'll be a good time for us to start it up, and we'll carry it on through the summer, and we'll see about carrying it really in more depth throughout the next football season to kind of replace some of the top 5 series, to take a little bit lighter load off the writing because it was so hard for me to write everything, and use the podcast as a way to get you guys involved with learning more about the Premier League and also getting involved with other leagues. I really want to expand what we talk about on My Fantasy Sports Talk in terms of football and taking it out of the Premier League and putting it in Ligue 1 in France, in the Bundesliga in Germany, Serie A in Italy, and just going as far out as we can. There have been so much in questions going into the mailbag. I had to pick the best 5 because I just could not get through, honestly, the 20 I wanted to write about. And you guys have been amazing. You've been submitting questions today, yesterday, and I have my top 5 so far selected. But if we get some good ones, we'll throw some more in there. But for now, that is the big announcement. There's a podcast, the Hat Trick Podcast, starring me. I don't have a co-host. I'd like to get one. The candidacy is open for a co-host if I can get one. I will try. But for now, this will just be me heading it up, and we'll build it as it goes. This is a work in progress.
So, but you made a good point there, because something I do want to stress to the folks at home who are watching is that this is not a temporary World Cup type update podcast. This is something that's going to be the World Cup. It just so happens this is great timing because you get to talk about that as well. But
right.
This is really a club level, soccer level of all levels type of podcast that we look to go on throughout the future and beyond.
Oh, absolutely. This is something I want to do for a very long time. I want this to be like a part of my regular routine I do honestly in life, is to do this podcast. Other things I've thought about attaching to it, a lot of questions were honestly requests that, that I actually throw more content with the podcast as time goes on. And I'm actually thinking about that. Something I've been thinking about doing is once FIFA 19 drops, I've thought about kind of getting into the whole gaming thing, and maybe along with the podcast, you guys will also get episodes of, FIFA 19 career mode, which is a huge mode in FIFA. The Ultimate Team's very popular. The Journey, the little story mode they throw in there. And of course, there's so much content just in gaming alone that relates to soccer. There's esports, and that is huge. I don't mind throwing that into the coverage going into this year. I just know that we set a great bar covering the Premier League, and I really want to take a step further and really engage you guys because you want so much more, and I want to give you all so much more. So
if we can get the gaming aspect of it off the ground, that would be huge too, because like you said, e-gaming is huge, and I'm all down for it, man. I've actually dabbled in that a little bit myself as far as capturing, games and whatnot. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work,
but I want to put the work in. I think that it would be a challenge that I need to go after. I need to try doing this because I've gone and covered every match week, save for one, of the Premier League. I skipped one because it was just only 4 games. I got every single match week, and I watched probably, I don't know. I watched well over 100 games. I mean, I could retain games to memory. Sorry for the train in the background.
You're near a train. Yeah, I was about to say.
This train in the background is so annoying. And this is just something that is really, it's not the easiest thing to do. It's certainly going to take time for the podcast to get popular, but you guys have already thrown in the mailbag like crazy. So I just think there's nothing to do but go up from here. And I just can't wait to really get the wheels rolling and really see, what you guys want the podcast to be. Do you want to just be like fan back questions? Do you want to go into different subjects, but different leagues? Because I'm going to hit a various amount of topics. This podcast is a great opportunity, like Brandon said, to really hit the club level just as much as the international level, and to get your guys' takes on teams that I don't even know about. Talk about leagues we don't really get to present to the main media. Great
point there. I just want to interject for a second, because actually there is now this is semi-pro soccer, but Memphis is actually getting involved in a new semi-pro league. I don't remember if this is an expansion or what, but Memphis is getting actually a semi-pro soccer team as well. And if I can remember correctly, if this was actually finalized, I believe they'd be playing in AutoZone Park or whatever they call it now, FedEx Park or whatever it is, which is the the AAA affiliate for the Cardinals, the Memphis Redbirds. It's their baseball park, so I believe they'd be playing there. So that's going to be exciting, and just the buzz around Memphis is pretty big about that too, because it's something new, it's something unique. They've had soccer before at a semi-pro level, indoor soccer leagues, and it's just something new and exciting to do during off seasons of football, regular football, American football, so it should be good. So that's just a little something too, because even if you're the semi-pro level, just like any other sport in the world, you're the semi-pro level 1 year, or one season, 1 year, you're one step away from being in the spotlight. So that's big too.
Yeah, it is big. Memphis getting its own team is big because there's actually in the MLS in the United States, shifting our focus there, they just added Cincinnati as a new city that will hold an MLS team. And Miami just got one through David Beckham. David Beckham's getting his own MLS team. We just saw Los Angeles FC get off the ground this year. We've seen Atlanta United do very well. And we know that expansion teams in MLS have shown some success. New York City FC has done okay. Minnesota United still taking its time. But Memphis getting its own semi-pro league, they're probably playing in the North American Soccer League because that's the semi-pro under level of MLS. And they don't have an affiliation with each other, but they should be honestly a great relegated. Like if you don't do well in the MLS, you get sent down to North American Soccer League. And it's something to dabble with, but Memphis getting their own team is big.
Well, and to me, soccer is just one of those sports that's kind of enjoyable to watch, really no matter the talent level. Of course, the talent level matters, as far as the level of excellence and what you're actually seeing. Like World Cup is way up there, but soccer is just fun to me. I don't care if it's girls. I'll watch college girls soccer.
Man, I watched if you remember, the USA women went to the World Cup in 2015. They had a huge run. I watched every game. I was glued to the TV when I saw the U.S. It's how, honestly, their exposure to Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe, Abby Wambach, you name it, their exposure is
Carly Lloyd.
Amazing. Carly
Lloyd hitting the equivalent of a half-court buzzer beater.
Pretty much. Hope Solo and all the drama she brings. Sorry, I got off tangent there. Gosh, she's drama. You think LeBron James is bad? Hope Solo is the LeBron James of US soccer.
She's beautiful, dangerous. She's a gorgeous girl that you're scared to death of.
Yeah. She's an imposing woman, but I think that's honestly a great facet about the U.S. women's team.
Well, that was they're better than later scandals, wasn't it? Wasn't that one of her later scandals? She beat up like her
Jeremy Stevens, NFL player.
Yeah,
that's who it was.
Yeah, he's a 6'8" tight end, and she beat the crap out of him. So.
She did not just beat the crap out of. She had to get a restraining order against her. I mean, Hope Solo is a 6 foot something imposing goalkeeper. She's one of the greatest goalkeepers in the world. But the exposure is amazing. The women's team does better than the men's national team. They're going to go to the World Cup next year.
Oh, a lot better. Yeah,
there's a women's World Cup next year. They do one after the men's, and they're going to be there. The men's aren't.
Yeah,
and that's embarrassing. Somewhat.
It's been like that for a while, though. It really has.
The women's team has done better than the men's, and people wonder why. Well, they're run better.
Well, there's too much other focus for young men in America. Basketball, football, baseball,
Indeed.
Soccer is so secondary. Whereas there's not those really next level type of opportunities for women in the United States for professional sports. But
no, there's not. There needs to be.
Soccer's definitely there. So
I mean, the biggest star in the United States right now is Christian Pulisic. I mean, people are starting to know his name, but that's only because he plays in Germany. The next big player that gains as much popularity as him is Jordan Morris. He plays in Seattle, but he doesn't get as much notoriety as Christian Pulisic. And I mentioned this in one of the responses to the mailbag questions of exposure to the MLS with American players would jumpstart the men's national team. But, that's a whole nother conversation for another time.
So let me get Dan's take on something real quick. How do you feel about maybe the gaming scenario that DDT mentioned, and maybe taking something like that off the ground as well? I think there's some success there. We would just have to recruit a different bunch of writers that could get together and maybe create more of an e-league section for myfantasysportstalk.com. Could be big.
Yeah, and not only that, but I've become a little bit more familiar with Twitch where the whole site that basically will record and share those gaming games and files. And I mean, esports is blowing up. It's on TBS or TNT every Saturday night.
Yep, it is.
Fox has
got to deal with them too.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely becoming a more and more popular thing. So I'm all for it. I'm not one to personally dabble into it too much, but I mean, the whole millions of people are. So yeah, it's definitely a growing industry, and I personally have friends that hate soccer, but they love the FIFA game. So
I don't get that at all.
They swear by it. They don't like soccer. They don't even watch soccer, but they play FIFA all the time.
They play FIFA.
Yeah, see, I'm not really like that. I don't watch hockey, so I don't play NHL. I don't
play. I like hockey. I just don't like NHL because it hasn't been good since 15. I mean,
well, and I'm not a parent, but I've heard from many parents with particularly young boys, teenage boys that are into gaming, that their sons will sit there and watch YouTube clips of people playing video games more than they actually play the games themselves.
That's me. I watch a guy. If you don't know him yet, you should. His name is the Master Bucks on YouTube, but he does FIFA career modes, and honestly, the game and him, I credit honestly with my love for soccer. Those two entities honestly made me the soccer fan that I am, especially playing FIFA because I play it religiously every day. I log in every day on FIFA. There won't be a day I won't.
And there's another great example of this. I know DDT knows, but there's a WWE superstar. You may not even know him if you don't keep up with wrestling, but Xavier Woods is probably known much, much more for his Up, Up, Down, Down YouTube channel. When all he does is play video games with wrestlers and different people. That's all. That's really all he does.
Watch it every day.
Throwback video games to the newest, current, latest, hottest video games. But we're talking about each one of his video. He posts gets millions of views, and I don't know how many millions of subscribers, but I think it's probably safe to say he's part of a trio in WWE known as New Day, which are very popular, very funny guys. But I would say he's probably transcended that even further and made more of a name for himself personally from Up, Up, Down, Down.
I agree. I mean, like the biggest thing is Up, Up, Down, Down became so big. Vince McMahon let him bring the entire brand of Up, Up, Down, Down into the WWE universe.
He's cross-branding and he's cross-promoting.
He's cross-branding it because he sees how successful one man's just simple gaming channel turned into an absolute empire. Like Up, Up, Down, Down is one of the biggest YouTube channels in the world. It's rivaling some people's gaming channels that they thought were going to be bigger for the rest of their lives. They have faded from the picture. Xavier Woods is probably one of the biggest YouTubers in the world right now.
So let's talk a little bit before we get out of here about the World Cup itself. I know you're excited for it. I really hadn't kept up with too much about the groupings and pairings, but I finally looked at it because we are about a week away now from the actual World Cup 18 starting. So have you had a chance to let me ask you, I know you've kept up with this a lot more than I have. I know who the top dogs are, but who is going to be your odds-on favorite if you had to pick 2-3 teams that you think are going to finish top of the World Cup and win it all?
Well, for first, second, and third place, I would say the final, if things work out, I would think Germany, and I'm going to go Brazil to make the final with France coming in third. I would say those are my top three. I think Brazil will rebound from their blunder 7-1 defeat against Germany when they lost Neymar, pretty much lost their entire team when he went off the game prior. I think they're a fantastic group. Their depth is so much greater this year with the additions of Gabriel Jesus now coming up through the ranks. Malcolm, there's just so much they have in depth. Germany as well. France is so much better now. Paul Pogba, Kylian Mbappe, Antoine Griezmann, Thomas Lemar, just to name a few names that'll be great there. Samuel Umtiti, Hugo Lloris at goalkeeper. There's just so much talent there. Other teams that could make moves for the final and deep into the tournament, Portugal are very good with Ronaldo. Argentina, I don't really give much of a looking to, even though Messi's on there. I just don't think he has enough to bring him there. Other teams that could do well, I think England could honestly do okay, but not very far into the tournament. My honestly big sleeper team I think you should look out for though, and this is going to sound crazy, but Iceland. Look out for Iceland because of how well they did at the Euros, the amount of attention they grabbed, and the fact that that team took on some powerhouses in Europe and beat them. I think Iceland's like my sleeper team to go far. And then a team I expect to not get out of the group stage that might be a surprise to people is Russia, the host country.
Well,
I don't
I
think
was
they'll
just
make it out.
Okay, and I don't really know how powerful of a team this Russia team may be, but I was just looking at it and I thought they had a fairly easy draw. I'm saying, what's with the home advantage draw in the Group A? They're in there with Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and then a pretty good team in Uruguay. But I think they should make it out of that group play over Saudi Arabia and Egypt.
I don't think they can beat Egypt. I think if Mo Salah plays, Egypt gets out of that group. I think Mo Salah and even the team that they have, it may not look like a strong team, but Russia does not have the strongest team they had from last World Cup because of the age. They're not the younger mid-level age group they used to be. They're a lot older now. And Egypt does have strength, especially with Mo Salah as a primary goal scorer. And Uruguay have a very decent team with Luis Suarez up front and with players like Jose Maria Jimenez at center back. And their team overall has decent players to really move them ahead of Russia. Now, I don't think it'll be a group that's like a landslide. Russia, I think, could get out of the group, but I see them finishing third. I don't see Saudi Arabia getting a point out of that group, but I've been wrong before. The World Cup is not a place to really see a definite winner. There are upsets all the time in the World Cup, so I can't say for sure, but I don't think Russia is getting out of this group.
Yeah, once you get to knockout play, anything can happen. Germany looks to be like in a fairly difficult group. I don't know. Germany's in there with Sweden.
Without Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Sweden will be a cakewalk.
Mexico, which has been awful lately.
No, they can eat. I don't think Mexico is a threat. I think they'll get out of the group with Germany though.
The Group B is also kind of interesting with Portugal and Spain. And then
That's
Morocco.
A group of death. I kind of would put that as a group of death, I guess, ish.
Morocco and then Iran. So
I mean, it's not a really great. I don't really know. There's a group of death because there's usually a big group that like no one
seems to be balanced. It's usually the group the United States gets thrown in.
And it would have been the one United States. You know what? And here's the funny thing: the World Cup mode I did in FIFA, I put United States in the group of death, and I got out of the group. I think it was one with Belgium, Denmark, and England. I think that's the
Group G. It's pretty strong. So Panama made it from CONCACAF along with Belgium, Tunisia, and then England. So you got a couple of big powerhouses there, England
Tunisia,
and Belgium.
That's the one. I wonder what the group of death is in. They're really not that tough.
It seems to be spread out fairly well to me.
Very even this year. I don't really know where the best teams are per se because I feel like the World Cup levels the playing field surprisingly in terms of what teams can get ahead because the chemistry has not been built as you would with a club team. The World Cup is pretty much a ragtag group of guys, great players, to try to figure out how to play well together to move forward. Managers have a tough time putting international teams together because they have to find a way to get the players that play with each other or to find the players that, have played with each other in the past to be on the team. Sometimes the best players don't get to play in the World Cup, and a great example this year, a lot of players have been omitted from World Cup squads. Examples such as Leroy Sané from Germany was the most recent exclusion. You have Raldo Neglan from Belgium. He's not being used. They're using Marouane Fellaini, who's one of the worst players in Manchester United squad. Neglan was one of the best players in Roma. Roma went very deep in the Champions League this year. There's so many players that were omitted, and it's shocking. Anthony Martial from France was omitted. He had a great season at Manchester United. It's a shock. It's a surprise to see certain players not in it. And it's only because certain players don't only know how to play with certain players. The front three in Brazil is probably going to be Neymar, Phil Coutinho, and maybe Roberto Firmino. Coutinho and Firmino know how to play with each other. They played together at Liverpool. but that's the most extent. Neymar's just Neymar. He's one of the greatest players in the world right now. You can't omit him from the squad. There's certain ways of getting into the squad. There's certain ways of not. But that factor changes how you look at a World Cup in terms of who's strong and who's not. There's no reason why a team such as Costa Rica couldn't beat a team like Germany. It could happen. One move, one call from a referee, one false move by a player, a red card changes an entire game around. So it's going to be interesting to see who wins this World Cup. I still pick Germany, France, and Brazil as my top 3 teams to place in the tournament.
There you go. Can't wait, man. Really, U.S. or not, I really can't wait for it. It kicks off a week from Thursday, I believe, the 14th. So
14th,
we're gonna get straight into it. So, but anyway, the new podcast. Tell the folks at home again how to reach you to submit their mailbag questions and to find out more about the podcast or possibly be involved in the podcast and going forward, how to reach you.
Of course, if you guys want to get involved with the mailbag, I'm going to submit mailbag posts every Monday. I will go Monday through Friday looking at submissions. If you want to submit, go to hattrickpod@gmail.com, all lowercase. If you also want to inquire about things about the show, ideas that you might even have for the show, because I'm very open to receiving them, you can get at my Twitter handle, Davis-Tirado, on Twitter. I also, if you follow me on Facebook, I don't think you do, but I post regularly to a discussion group in Facebook that's like world renowned. It has all the soccer fans in the world on that group. I post there regularly. Twitter, you can get me there. I also post to myfantasysports.com with the mailbag questions. So just continue doing what you guys have been doing. I can't wait to get this started. Look for end of June to be the debut of the first actual episode.
There you go. Can't wait. That's all I know. Thanks, DDT. Hey, Dan, kid knows his soccer, man. He's an asset to myfantasysportstalk.com. If you didn't just listen to all that and think kid doesn't know his soccer, well, myfantasysportstalk.com is your place to be for all that soccer knowledge. Can't wait for the addition of a brand new podcast to the site.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Real quick question. There's a German team that has my last name with an E on the end of it. How do you pronounce it?
FC Schalke.
Schalke. All right. It's not the same.
No,
Thought I might be in part owner and not know. But
if you want to find a club to support, man, what better than one that has part of your name in it?
Yeah, I guess
granted,
so.
Though, their star player just left for Bayern Munich, though. So
darn. So now I'm crushed.
Well, I heard your family when they got to the U.S., Dan, your ancestors when they got to the U.S., they were just a little lazy, so they just dropped that E. Like, I ain't writing all that crap out. So you might want to check into that. It might be some royalties left somewhere there.
I'm gonna look into it. Thank you for the info.
All the soccer information you can have right there. Hat Trick Podcast. Look for it soon from myfantasysportstalk.com. For our man DDT Dillon Davis-Tirado, the owner and host of that podcast, and my co-host on the My Fantasy Podcast, Dan Shaw, Brandon Reed. Next time, later, podcast peeps. Peace.